The horror franchise is littered with archetypal murderers including masked serial killers, carnivorous monsters, and evil extraterrestrials. But seductive killers don't go on mindless rampages. Instead, they strategically devise a charade so they come across as inviting, likeable, and irresistible, solely to lull their victims into a false sense of security. They may seem normal on the outside, but make no mistake, this lot have nothing but sinister intentions. With that, I'm Tilly from What Culture Horror, and these are 10 horror movie villains who seduced and killed. Number 10. Julia Cotton, Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. The Hellraiser franchise centres around a puzzle box called the Lament Configuration, which can open a doorway to hell. Julia Cotton, who is married to Larry, had an affair with his brother Frank before the Lament Configuration banished Frank to the underworld. Realising she could resurrect him by feeding his corpse, she lured unsuspecting men to her home with the promise of sex before killing them. After Frank absorbed their blood, bones and organs, he is revived. Even though Julia was cast down to hell in the climax of the first Hellraiser movie, Dr. Channard revived her in the sequel by feeding her patients from his mental institution. Because Channard rescued her from the worst fate imaginable, you'd think Julia would feel indebted to him. However, she betrayed him at the first chance she got, allowing him to be transformed into a Cenobite. If you thought Julia left Channard to rekindle her relationship with Frank, guess again. When the two are reunited, Julia ripped Frank's heart out, killing him. By this point, it was obvious Julia would seduce and ally with anyone if it helped her obtain the powers of hell. Number 9. Asami Yamazaki, Audition. Audition begins with a widower called Shigeharu trying to find love again. Since he struggles to approach women, his friend encourages him to set up a mock screen test to quote-unquote audition young women for the role of his new wife. When he meets an auditionee called Asami, he is instantly smitten and begins dating her. Little does he know that Asami becomes murderously jealous if she suspects her partners love anyone but her. So, when she finds a picture of Shigeharu's late wife in his house, she feels betrayed and paralyzes him with a drug. While Shigeharu is immobilized, Asami shoves needles into his body and hacks his foot off with a wire saw while saying deeper repeatedly. If that sounds messed up, that's not even the worst thing she does. When her ex-lover betrayed her trust, she chopped off 3 of his fingers, his ear, his tongue, both his feet, and imprisoned him in a sack where she fed him her own vomit for months. Unlike most femme fatales, Asami never initially intends to kill her victims. Sadly, her partners seem predestined to suffer a grisly end by Asami's hands due to her own crippling insecurities. Number 8. Santanico Pandemonium, From Dusk Till Dawn. In From Dusk Till Dawn, fugitive bank robbers Seth and Richard Gecko take the Fuller family hostage so they can use their RV to flee to Mexico. The group seek refuge at a truck stop, unaware it's a den for vampires. The hosts entertain their guests by bringing out their star attraction, a stripper called Santanico Pandemonium. As Santanico finishes her show, Richard gets stabbed in the hand by one of the locals. As blood drips from his wound, Santanico finds herself unable to control her hunger. Transforming into her vampiric form, she drains Richard dry, killing him. Even though Santanico had a brief appearance and very little dialogue, her seductive and cruel nature leaves a massive impact on the viewer. She may have the face of an angel, but the way she talks to Seth and how she intends to make him her slave proves she is bad to the bone. Because she's obviously been used as a lure to attract humans to feed on for decades, one can only imagine how many unsuspecting folks have met their maker due to Santanico's allure. Number 7. Rose Armitage, Get Out. Get Out begins with photographer Chris meeting the family of his girlfriend Rose for the first time. Her family, the Armitages, go out of their way to make Chris feel welcome, and yet he can't shake the feeling they have malicious intentions. Sadly, Chris's suspicions are spot on. In the climax, Chris learns Rose's father Richard is transplanting the brains of family members and neighbours into younger bodies to help them cheat death. When Richard made this discovery, he encouraged Rose to lure people like Chris to the Armitage residence to serve as test subjects for his twisted experiments. While Richard prepares for Chris's lobotomy, Rose heads to her room where she scours the internet for the next viable victim to serve as her boyfriend. This scene is brief and dialogue-free, but emphasises how Rose lives purely to serve her tyrannical father and has no compassion for the lives she destroys. Number 6. Jennifer Check, Jennifer's Body. Being the most popular cheerleader at school, Jennifer Check feels like her life couldn't get any better. However, everything falls apart when a rock band sacrifices her to Satan to obtain fame and fortune. Because the ritual only works for a virgin sacrifice and Jennifer had had sex the previous year, she doesn't die and instead is reborn as a bloodthirsty succubus. As her body begins to rot away at an alarming rate, Jen learns that she can rejuvenate herself by consuming human flesh. In order to survive, she begins gorging on her classmates. What makes Jennifer different to most femme fatales is how she still possesses a moral compass, even after being transmogrified into a literal man-eater. Because she chooses not to eat her friend Needy when she has the perfect opportunity to, there is no question here that there is still some good in her. Sadly, the compulsion to consume the high schoolers around campus is too overwhelming. As she embraces her new lifestyle more and more, she uses her sex appeal to seduce and consume locals, friends, and even Needy's boyfriend Chip. Number 5. Lestat de Lioncourt, Interview with the Vampire. The late Anne Rice's novel Interview with the Vampire may have received mixed reviews upon its initial release, but the film adaptation was such a hit it helped reignite the vampire genre in the 1990s. It also brought one of the most iconic literary vampires to the big screen, Lestat de Lioncourt, portrayed by a mesmerising Tom Cruise. Throughout the story, Lestat's former companion Louis, played by Brad Pitt, discusses his life as a blood-sucking creature to a reporter. During this interview, he explains how Lestat turned him into a vampire to give Louis' life meaning after he lost his family. Although Lestat hopes the two of them could travel the world and feed together, Louis refuses to take a human life, forcing him to live off animals to satiate his bloodlust. Even though Lestat has a talent to beguile women, his seduction skills are highlighted the most with Louis. The way Lestat talks about his life, Louis was fooled into thinking becoming immortal would spell the end of his melancholy. Only after he was reborn as a vampire did Louis realise Lestat tricked him into becoming his lackey to help him embrace his hedonistic lifestyle. Number 4. Lola Stone, The Loved Ones. In The Loved Ones, suicidal high schooler Brent is asked by classmate Lola to be her prom date. Brent refuses, saying he's going to the dance with his girlfriend. Understandable. Unable to accept rejection, Lola kidnaps Brent, ties him up and forces him to have an ad hoc prom at her house. As Lola tortures Brent, he tries to play along with her sick game while he formulates a plan to escape. Because of the way Brent is tied up while his captor torments him physically and mentally, The Loved Ones feels like the dinner scene from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre if it were an hour longer. If you found that scene uncomfortable to watch, that should give you an idea as to how disturbing this film is to sit through. Due to how utterly demented Lola is, it would be easy for The Loved Ones to come across as a generic slasher, but Robin McLevy is so dedicated to the role, it allows the film to transcend from pure schlock to a deeply unnerving watch. Even though there's nothing to justify Lola's behaviour and Brent is a victim through and through, you still feel sorry for her, purely because of the actor's performance. Number 3. Natalya and Svetlana, Hostel. In Hostel, Paxton and his friends venture to Slovakia after they hear the country's resorts are filled with beautiful and horny women. As soon as they arrive at the hostel, Paxton meets two locals, Natalya and Svetlana, who are more than happy to satiate his every need. As Paxton's friends start disappearing one by one, he suspects the two women are somehow responsible. When they bring him to a rundown factory where his friends are supposedly waiting for him, he is kidnapped. When he awakes in a dungeon, Paxton learns the girls are paid by an insidious company to draw men to a remote building where hedonistic psychopaths pay good money to torture them any way they see fit. There are few characters in horror that encapsulate the femme fatale trope better than this pair. Like sirens, Natalya and Svetlana use their glamour to drive men to their death. Their actions have no higher purpose save to make money. Even though femme fatales can be sympathetic or understanding, the way Natalya and Svetlana cackle as their victims are dragged to their death showcase there is nothing redeemable about them. Number 2. Syl, Species. Species revolves around an alien-human hybrid called Syl, who was created by the US government. After breaking out of her cell, she prowls around Los Angeles, eager to find a mate to impregnate her. Because she has the appearance of a beautiful young woman, Syl has little difficulty enticing men to bed. She kills any man who rejects or mistreats her and slaughters any alpha female out of competitive jealousy. Syl's behaviour may sound callous at first, but you can't help but feel sorry for her. Like every creature in the animal kingdom, she is driven by an unbearable desire to procreate and only lashes out at those who stand in her way. However, as she grows more desperate, Syl becomes far more manipulative. To urge a passing woman to trust her, Syl pretends she has been sexually assaulted. Once the woman gets close, Syl kills her and assumes her identity. At another point, she fakes her death to evade her pursuers, proving she is no longer a creature acting out of instinct, but instead a being who consciously exploits and kills anyone she wants to suit her own needs. Number 1. Count Dracula, Dracula. Because the whole seductive killer trope is dominated by women in the horror genre, it's easy to forget the granddaddy of seduction himself, Dracula. For 90 years, we've seen the Transylvanian Count portrayed by Gary Oldman, Christopher Lee, Lon Chaney Jr. and many others, each putting their unique stamp on Bram Stoker's iconic character. Though there are countless versions of Dracula, it's fair to say Bela Lugosi found the perfect balance of charm and menace. Even if he couldn't hypnotise his targets with a glare, this incarnation of Dracula has no problem commanding a room with his charisma. Despite being imposing, it's his elegance and gravitas that makes him stand out. Even when he does something suspicious, he has some nebulous quality that compels his peers to trust him. We know he's a monster, and yet his likability compels us to root for him, even when he's sucking his targets dry. But the prey he feeds on are not the only ones Dracula has entranced. Since society is still enthralled with this sensational character after nearly a century, it's self-evident we have all been caught in Dracula's spell. And that's our list. What other seductive horror villains terrified you? Let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and swing on by our channel again if you want to catch more creepy content. I've been Tilly, and this has been What Culture. Thank you so much for watching, look after yourselves, and I'll see you soon.